Dude, how do you feel being co-bossman of the week? We got CEO out. We've got acquisitions gal out. We've got Dumb and Dumber running the company this week.
And it's in flames. No, it's not. I was going to make a joke that the team is on my back and I'm having back issues, but it's too early. It's too early in the week to make that joke.
It's too early in the week, bro. Come Friday, we'll see if your back's hurting, bro. We'll see if the back's sore at all.
I can only make that joke if I sign 4 deals.
And 4 deals incoming, bro. Got to get it done. We got to take care of business while the boss man's gone, bro.
That's it, bro. I know he's going to listen to this. He's going to be like, stop doing that voice.
Stop, bro. Stop. So
all right, guys.
Today, bro.
Welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. Today we are cash. When the what's the saying? When the cat's away, the mice come out to play. Cade and I are we're in full cash mode right now, and we've got an interesting discussion. Something to talk about, especially for the teams that are doing business, like a little bit more business.
Yeah,
and it has to jump back into how do you track performance in the team, and how do you, as a business leader and a business owner, how do you make sure that you keep a calm and steady ship when our business is definitely one? Honestly, it's not just real estate. I think any small business, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day ebbs and flows. And how do you make sure that you're not riding the waves with the rest of the team? And how do you help the team get off of the wave?
Because it's a lot easier said than done. I mean, we've even talked about this issue from a macro level, right? When we've talked about our cash flow forecasting and, being very heavily disappointed when a property, that was supposed to close at the end of one month ends up trickling down to the other month, and us beating ourselves up about it. So it is a lot easier said than done. It's a muscle that needs to be trained, because it's very easy to be caught up in those minute details and be caught up in the day-to-day, but you're 100% right.
Yeah. I mean, so I want to do my best to explain what we're talking about, so that people aren't caught. So when I'm talking about how we're looking at metrics, the best example is, you have that day where you sign, this was me on Friday, you sign 2 deals, you close out a project that's taken forever. Earlier in the week, you had the biggest closing of the year, and you're riding high on a kite, and you're like, woo, this is awesome, life is good, business is great. You check out for the weekend on a high note, and then you come back Monday, and you have less appointments than you expected. And you don't immediately go sign another quick and easy deal. And, you're looking and you're like starting to feel that little panic in you, kind of starting to swell up, like, oh shit, how are we going to get a contract this week? And really what it comes down to is understanding that there's going to be these ebbs and flows in closings, in purchases, in leads, in appointments. And it's getting off of the day-to-day emotional roller coaster that comes from oh, I felt super great this day, and oh, I felt super bad that day. And starting to see okay, where am I trending? And is that in the direction I want or not? Is that a good synopsis? Does that resonate with you, at least, on what I'm talking about?
100%. Yeah. Crystal
I think
clear.
And who knows? I've said it before, salespeople are divas, and they're hard to manage. And I feel like I definitely fit that character type very well, that I can be very emotionally involved. And I think it is a skill set in sales, but in leadership, it's not. And so the way this stands out to me is, we're working through what performance looks like for the team. And it's just interesting when I talk with Jenny, or I think about it long and hard. You can't make hiring and firing decisions off of 1 week or 2 weeks. Even 3 weeks is really where you start getting to a trend, right? Because week 1 is just a dot on the graph. Week 2 is just a straight line. Week 3, you start to see the line forming, and by 4 weeks, you're starting to see a curve. By a quarter in, it may be too late, right? You're already wasting 90 days, but it's something to just think about, is how do you look at these numbers and how do you keep a steady emotional state when you're looking at performance in your business?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I feel like from a bird's eye view, right, you want to find the fine line on how emotionally involved you are. I mean, like you mentioned, I mean, sales is a heavily emotional side of the business because you're talking with leads, you're talking with clients, especially in our industry where most of those leads and clients and potential sellers have some sort of pain point. There are a ton of emotions tied to it. And even for the salespeople, when you ink a contract, that's like an immediate high right there for most salespeople. And then same with the closing. We close a big deal, we sell a big deal, and the profits are coming back in. That's a huge emotional uptick. And then the next day, no closings. And you're like, well, that emotional high is come and gone. But if you're too attached to that, then you're just riding this emotional roller coaster. And we have to try and bring some sort of steadiness to the inherent chaos that the industry brings. Because no matter how consistent we wish our marketing, lead flow, contract signed, deals closed would be, that's just not the nature of our industry. It's not a steady industry. It's like when we talk about too, when we try and talk about putting together SOPs or standard operating procedures, when we try to really
I love that you worked SOPs into this.
Always. Or like when we try and formulate how to comp a property, for an example, right? As much as we try to make it a science, it's always going to be an art. There's some aspects to it that we can materialize. And I think it's just the same thing from our business perspective. It's a switch that needs to be turned in our heads that no matter how much we wish, that's just not the nature of the beast. So how can we come in each and every single day level-headed, celebrate the wins, recognize the losses, recognize when things are steering in the right direction, but keep a level head consistently throughout the business? Because it feels really good when the highs are here and we're riding the wave, but we know that's only part of the top of the bell curve, and we know the waves keep going. So how do we keep that steadiness in the wave of chaos, that is this business of investing in real estate?
Yeah, and again, like I said, I think any small business goes through this because by the time you get to a Fortune 500 company, there's always some wins happening because they're doing enough volume. And I think I just look and you've experienced this, and I think a lot of people, you can't get rid of the emotional highs. They're what kind of keep you driving. It's a lot like golf. The way you tie in SOPs, I'm going to tie in golf. There's the joke. You only hit one good shot like a game of golf, and that's what brings you back. Like, it's a lot like this business, You get beat up, you get beat up, you get beat up, you get beat up. You hit one good thing, you have to celebrate it because it's the one chance you get to celebrate it that day. But when that one good shot doesn't happen in your game, you can't also say, okay, well, I'm giving it up forever, right? And so I'm sitting in the acquisition seat for the first time, full time this week in a while. And it's just interesting. I came in with a different mindset than I had before in the acquisition seat. And I told you yesterday, I got 4 no's. I'm 4 no's closer to my yes. I know it's coming. That's not how I used to think. And I extrapolated that last night into like, well, damn, I look at that in my current role, right? When the team's not performing, I get down on myself the same way that I used to get down on myself if I didn't sign a deal. And when the team's performing, I get way out of whack the other way because I'm looking too narrow. I'm looking at just like a dot on the map, and I'm not looking at the curve. And so, one way that we've, on the sales side, worked to mitigate that feeling is throughout the quarter, we have, like in our sales team's Asana board, we have each of our major metrics, and we're tracking them, and we put the percentage of the way through the quarter, and we put the percentage of the way to the goal. And so, for example, in Q2, we watch the curve slip from the goal, right? And it's a bit demoralizing, but at some point you do get bad news, right? And unfortunately, Q2, we just didn't perform the way that we were hoping when we set our goal. But Q3, we adjusted, and you look, and the first week, we started out just a tad bit behind. And then the second week, we were right on target. The third week, we were a tad bit ahead. The fourth week, we're even more ahead. And it's like, okay, so you're watching the curve now give you good news. You can't get emotionally caught up in the day-to-day. You have to watch the week-to-week, and you have to be able to make decisions on either monthly or quarterly trends. Am I saying this right? Because this feels like a bit of an epiphany to me, that we watch our stoplight report and you don't beat yourself up if you miss 1 week. But if you start seeing the trend 2-3 weeks forming, then you make an adjustment and you see how the trend reacts. Yeah,
I think it's interesting for you to share your light bulb moment when, a seasoned acquisitions agent, a seasoned salesperson can power through those no's because, exactly like you said, they have the mindset that they're one step closer to the yes. We know we have to dive through the no's in order to get to the yeses. But then when you transfer to the management seat, it's interesting because, again, as you move up into the management seat, you're a novice manager. You then are back being focused. You're back to being a novice and saying, okay, this week or today, there was nothing. What the hell's going on? That's instead of looking at it from the same perspective that, okay, we had a rough week. That means we're 1 week closer to having an absolutely kick-ass week because we know the ebbs and flows of the business. We know that there's going to be these weeks, and we know right on the horizon there's going to be the stronger weeks that come. And I think, again, all of this is easier said than done, and I think it comes with experience in the seat, right? I mean, for you, acquisitions for 5 years, five and a half years, and now a year and a half into a management seat, right? Everybody, you have to work through it. You have to be in the seat, I feel like, for most people in order for that to really click, because it's hard, especially in a manager seat or a leadership seat like you and I. We're accountable for all that. So that's extra pressure that's on the shoulders. Even though we're not there in the house doing the appointment, whatever it is, we still have the weight of those results on our shoulders, and we really need to shift that.
It's like almost worse to not be able to be like, oh, it was my fault. Like it's, or even worse, you're like, oh, it is my fault. And then you look and you're like, well, could I have done all of these people's tasks if it was just me? And the answer is no, you have to rely on other people. And sometimes you have to accept the fact that, like, even if they did everything you told them to do, maybe it wasn't it, man. And so I'm looking at it, Q2 was definitely not where we wanted it to be, and Q3 is shaping up very well. But I noticed that my emotions aren't as tied to the outcome right now as they have been in the past. And it's just interesting. I think that really comes from like learning that you can't look at too small of a picture and make an assumption. You have to look at the trend in the long term. And in the long term, dude, we are on this upward trajectory. And so the fact that our upward trajectory goes up and a little bit down, but then more up and then a little bit down and a little more up, like, you have to be happy with the wins there, and you have to just keep pursuing incremental progress that way. And you can't let, the Monday that you come back and you didn't sign anything, you can't let that get you down. And when you get to like the right place, and I'm not there yet, but I can feel this bit of a shift that like I left yesterday and I was like, damn, that was a productive day. But materially, if you look at the KPIs, it didn't lead to the result we were hoping for. You'd hope you have 4 conversations, you get 1 contract. Like at my level, I hold myself to an accountability that if I go on 2 appointments, I'm signing 1. So to go have 4 and not get any, it's like, well, you can't beat yourself up because 1 blip was bad. When you zoom out, am I on the right trajectory? And I think that's something that really needs to be hammered on.
Yeah, I think not only hammered on for anybody in a management or leadership spot, but you have to be able to download that then respectively to your team members. Because it's, as a leader, as a manager, it's not only your job to have that click for you. It's great if it's clicking for us, but if it's not clicking for your team members who are on the front lines in the trenches day to day, then it does no good for you to know it and to feel it. You have to be able to download that into your team so that they have that same perspective too.
Dude, you're exactly right. And like, what happens to your team's confidence and performance when the leader is calm and confident, even in a tough spot, like a tough week, right? Not rhetorical. What happens to your team's confidence?
They're confident. They stay much more level-headed than if the CEO or the leader is acting like the sky is falling. Because if they see the leader or the manager thinking and saying and verbalizing that the sky is falling, then they're going to think the sky's fucking falling.
And so then if we know that you pass down to your team the feelings that you're holding, whether you say it out loud or not, like if your behavior is demonstrating panic, they begin to panic.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what role in our team you're in. If you're panicked, you perform worse. This isn't just the sales side, though I think the sales side, you can see it very clearly. But if your accountant is panicked and rushing, they start doing weird shit, They start bending the rules because they want people to be happy, especially their boss, right? Mm-hmm. They want, the handyman starts overworking himself and burns out and quits. Well, that didn't help, right? Like all these things can happen. And I look at it and it's just so interesting that this hasn't been as clear and as like crystallized in my mind that the only way you get off this roller coaster is by zooming out and like looking. That's part of your job when you aren't in the day-to-day, is to zoom out and project confidence when there's confidence to be projected for good reasons. And then, projecting confidence with solutions when, unfortunately, sometimes you do give bad news,
What's the fine line? And I ask this in a sales sense, what's the fine line though between wanting to project that, but then also if you're seeing a trend of 2, 3, 4 negative weeks, I guess what I'm trying to hammer down here is not only projecting confidence and knowing that we're on the wave, but that trend could also be pointing to a broken gear in the system, or a broken team member in the system, or a broken process in the system that all the team members are following. So, I mean, the fine line between projecting confidence, but then also saying, guys, I think something's wrong here. What are we doing, or what do we need to do to fix it?
I think it starts with focusing on what's working when the results are positive. Creating a feedback loop that you do consistently when things are good. It's like building rapport with a seller. Building rapport with your team requires time, and time does matter. So being there and supporting and creating a feedback loop when things are going good, that's step one, right? Hey, we signed these many deals, or we went on this many appointments, or we qualified this many leads, or we had this many people call in. What did we do right that led to that? And getting really good at creating that feedback loop. But you're right. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. And unfortunately, you have down periods, right? I think for me, at least in the sales role, the way that we look at it is one down week is just a conversation. Hey, Cade, I noticed that you missed your metric. You've been hitting it for a couple weeks. What did you notice last week? Right? Where were you spending your time? What were you doing on the appointment? Right? Did anything change? Let's first identify if something changed in your behavior. Then, hey, did anything change in the market? Right? Well, with marketing, for example, we've had weeks where we send out 60,000 letters or 30,000 letters, and just we got less calls. So if a lead manager misses their qualified lead target, it's like, well, boss, I answered every call that came in. I reached out to all these people. That was the end result. Okay, well, let's take that back a layer deeper and just kind of see like what actions. Let's look at your calendar. Let's look at your call logs. Let's just make sure that that's accurate, right? So week one is just a very basic conversation, and you earn the right to have that conversation when you've been championing the successes, right? So, hey, we missed. What are we going to do to get back on track next week? Week two misses again. Now there's a more critical conversation, right? Hey, we missed 2 weeks in a row. One is an anomaly or just a bad week. Two, we can't let happen. How are we going to make sure we don't miss it this week? So it wasn't just like, what did you notice, and letting them maybe help self-discover. You're going to come in a little bit and you're going to give guidance. Like, it's not a pip, but it's I'm stepping in. What do we have to do to make sure that you don't miss a third week? If they miss a third week, at that point, you need to really seriously consider what's going on. And like the thought process is like, okay, is the process wrong? Or did we coach them to do something that's not working, right? Because sometimes that's the case. Two, did we not train them correctly on the process? In the sales role, a lot of the training comes into the conversations and the follow-ups, right? When do we call? What do we say? What's our purpose? What's the next step? After that, it's did we set the right expectations, right? Our expectations very clear. Hey, you need to go on X amount of appointments, or you need to talk to this many people a day. And then the last is people. So at that point, we have a potentially a people issue. And step three is, okay, we're going to do extra training to make sure, and I'm going to watch you a little bit more, and we're going to work together on this. If you miss the third week, or the third week, like at that point, you're probably going on PIP. And there's like a very clear PIP on what needs to happen. But again, that's not looking at the day-to-day. We're looking at the trend that is forming.
Yeah, exactly.
And the goal with a PIP isn't to fire people. The goal on a PIP is to actually get them back into performance, right? And that's the hard part.
It is, because then essentially you're also in inspiration mode there too, right? On a individual or employee level, because you're trying to cast this vision. You're trying to poke and pry at what's going wrong. You're trying to have a difficult conversation with this team member while still trying to vision cast and inspire that we can turn this ship around. You can turn this ship around. But it's going to take time, energy, effort, and a very much laser focus in order for us to get back on track. And then it's essentially in the hands of the team member to say, all right, am I going to step up to the plate? Am I going to hit the ball, or am I going to fucking strike out? What am I going to do? Because, inherently a little bit of the pressure's on when we see this third week come, and then deciding how this fourth week's going to shape out.
Well, and I think when you're doing that PIP, you can't do that PIP results-based. It has to be performance-based, right? Yes. Like for a lead manager, it can't be you have to qualify for sellers today. You extrapolate from the people that are succeeding, and you say The people that are succeeding to get to 4 qualified leads are talking to 8 sellers, right? So you, Cade, need to speak with 8 sellers and follow our lead intake process. And we're going to review all 8 sellers, and we're going to review what you did. Because if you followed the process and you happen to get 8 people that weren't qualified, I'm not firing you over that. But, and it's the same for, an acquisitions person. It's like, hey, the successful people on our team go on 4 appointments and they sign 1 contract. So you need to attend 4 appointments, and you need to follow the appointment process before, during, and after, and we're going to review all 4 of those. Right?
Yeah.
Because you and I both know, like, it's hard to ever draw a hard line with somebody when part of their success relies on the cooperation of another person. So you have to pip them on the behavior that you're looking for. And if you pip them and they do their 4 appointments, or let's do a more realistic number, 2 appointments a day, each working day for 4 weeks, there is no way that if somebody follows your process that's proven to work, that they go through that and it doesn't work. But you're not pipping them based on number of contracts they sign. You're pipping them based on their performance of the actual process. So they could get 3 appointments. But if they're doing the process wrong, you need to go back to training and say, look, the result was great, but we need to train. Like, you broke protocol, X, Y, or Z. And then you need to look and say, is what they did better, right? That's like part of this.
Yeah.
But we're off track because now we're talking about pips. I think the bigger thing to look at is, no matter what seat you are in the company, you need to look at stuff as patterns that are forming. I keep saying curves because that's what comes to mind when I'm looking at, like, if you were to put this on a line graph. But you can't get panicked when you have a down day or a down week or even a down month, depending on what you're tracking.
For sure.
You need to look at the trend that you see forming, and you need to go through that process. Was there something I could have done? Is there something different with the market? Is there something different that needs to change within our team? Like, you have to go through those things before you make irrational or quick decisions.
And I mean, think about the down, the unproductive months that we've had so far this year, where we very much underproduced, and we looked back on the month and asked those same exact questions. Once a month, our leadership team has our meeting, and in our agenda, we're asking ourselves all of these same exact questions. Is there anything that needs changing in our systems? Is there anything that needs changing in our relationships or partnerships? Are there changes that are needed in marketing, right? And that's on, again, a monthly basis. Just because there's a down or a shit month, what's the current state of the business? What's the trend for now, the upcoming month, right? So and we've had to work through that. I mean, 2 or 3 months out of this year, which came up vastly short, and we're like, okay, where's the trend putting us now for this upcoming month? Where's the trend putting us now for this upcoming quarter? Going through those same exact questions, asking ourselves those questions at a leadership level, downloading that information to our team members, and seeing how are we going to steer the ship to get back on track, or are we steering the ship in the right direction? And it was some of the things that were out of our control. I think that's what's so important about doing these temperature checks and reviewing these on a weekly basis and also a monthly basis too. Because again, the whole topic of our conversation was you can't get caught up in the emotional of the day to day.
I mean, and that's the thing. I'm going to use our company as an example. We set a target, and I remember multiple months where we were like, damn, we way missed the target. But looking, we're actually not very far off in the grand scheme of things. And like, one of the things that I've learned to do is like overhype the negative and underhype the positives. When we have a great blow up month, I don't get hyped about it. But when we have a bad month, I get like really down about it. And that's not appropriate. The same way getting super hyped when you have a big month and then not really worrying when you have a bad month is also not appropriate. You have to have an equal balance. You have to stand right in the middle of those two where you allow a little bit of that to come in, because ultimately, if you're underperforming consistently, there's an issue. And if you are overperforming and getting overhyped and then letting yourself relax, that's also an issue.
Yeah,
like
you don't want to be caught as the dog in the meme where he's in the house, everything's burning, and he's saying everything's fine. You don't want to get to that point.
And so that's why we're saying, like, you know, I'm not recommending that you wait a quarter to change the issue, but don't make quick decisions or brash decisions off of one bad day or one bad appointment or one bad whatever. And I have fallen victim to this way too much, where I hear one bad call and I'm like, oh God, we got to change our whole process. And it's like, well, dude, listen to more than one call. And if we see a trend, train on it, and let's see what the right way to handle this is. And, that's where you screw up your team's confidence. And I definitely have done this, because it's just, like you said, I mean, I'm new to the management seat. I hear one bad thing, I'm like, oh, change that. And as I've gotten better at slowing down my changes and being a little bit more methodical, it's like, oh, the team not only like is more confident in accepting the change, but they're better at the change altogether. Like their confidence comes through in them handling situations in a way that they wouldn't when they don't know if this is going to lead to a complete overhaul tomorrow.
Yeah, you're 100% right too. And I think as your team members start to get more seasoned with that mindset, and you equip them to think differently, and you equip them to not get ultra emotional, they will start to ask themselves those same exact questions, and they'll come to you with that feedback, right? You won't, in a perfect world with that communication loop, you're not even having to ask. It's them coming and saying, hey boss, this past week I was going through, it was a down week for me. I was combing through my leads, my conversations. Marketing did this. I had an off call here. I was, difficult seller. I was feeling off, but all the rest of these were really, really good. Can you give me a double set of eyes and see if I'm off base here? And I think when you start to equip your team members to think differently like that, they start to operate like killers. And that's ultimately what you want out of your team.
I'm going to give like a concept here. I wonder if you'd agree with this. Track your inputs weekly. Like, track your efforts weekly. Track the results monthly. Because if you go a week without doing the work, there's an issue.
Absolutely.
But if you go a week without the result that you were looking for, but you did the work, that's not the end of the world. We don't panic if you did the work, but the results weren't what we hoped for. Because ultimately, everything is a percentage of your actions. But if the results are off by a month, there's a problem. Because if you did the work for 4 weeks and the results were off, either your system is off, your training is off, your accountability is off, or the person's off.
Yeah.
We have enough data in our expectations at this point of multiple years that we know that if you did the work, the result, unless you are extraordinarily unlucky, the result would have happened.
Exactly right. 100%. It's the same thing. Like when you take somebody, a brand new investor, and they go 6 months without their first deal, which is very typical, by the way, 6+ months for their first deal. You sit down. I mean, we were in this boat. You sit down. Somebody tells you, okay, what have you been doing for the past 6 months? And you do the temperature check and you comb through all of the daily activities, the weekly activities, the monthly activities. And if you're doing all of the things you're supposed to do, again, it's just a matter of time. But is there anything broken in that process that's throwing off your timeline, throwing off your curve?
Yeah. I just look at it like we've been doing this long enough and tracking our numbers long enough that I can admit that there will be small variances based on the market. But ultimately, if we're training daily, which we are, we're working daily, which we are, and you are following the process, we know for certain that every 10 sellers that own real property that want to sell, we know for certain 1 in 10 will sign a contract with us. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week. But if you do that week after week after week, the result is inevitable that we know we've done this long enough that this process results in this. That is the minimum. And so, that's just like the way I'm looking at this. And so as I'm having conversations with the team, highlighting them when they do well for a week's worth of input, and that's the other part. Encourage the input, not the result. Get your team off of like thinking about the results or what dictate if they're good or not. But like, hey, you did this, this, and this, and that's awesome. Not you got X, Y, and Z as a result. That's awesome. But get them on that hype train week after week. That earns you the confidence and the trust that when they do miss on a performance or on a result for a month, a promise, a commitment like the action for a week or the result within, a month, that you can have a critical conversation. And that PIP doesn't feel like, hey, you're getting let go. This is us politely giving you a 2-week notice. This is us inspiring and drawing a line on how you're going to get there. And you have to do the work, but we're here to support you getting the work done and giving you the resources to get there. So I don't know, man. That was kind of my realization. And it came from yesterday, just being like not tripped up at all. That normally we have more activity on Mondays and we just didn't. It was just, that's how yesterday went.
And that's okay because all of the inputs were there. The conversations were there. The reps were put in and it's okay. Right? You're not going into the gym doing 10 reps of bench press or 10 reps of curls and coming out with brand new massive arms, right? The results, you're not always going to see those results on day one. Yeah, dude, I mean, if there's lots of key takeaways, but if there's one key takeaway for people to take away from this, and you just shared something, we were just talking about this literally within the past week where we were talking about kind of different team members and how where they shine the brightest in terms of the feedback they get and what pumps them up the most. I think if anybody takes anything away from this, I think highlighting and encouraging the activity, the behavior, and the stuff they're doing that's putting them on the right path instead of all of the outputs or all of the results. Because then when you reaffirm the behavior, the lower the chances are they're going to deviate from the good behavior, right? If you take somebody in any seat, in any business, in any role, in any job, if you've got your upper management telling you, hey, the activities you did today, the calls you made today, if any of that, you're getting positive reinforcement, most people operate on the sense when they get that positive reinforcement, they're going to want to duplicate it. They're not concerned about how much commission they made or however many deals they closed. When they get reaffirmment on the behavior, they want to continue to repeat that behavior and they're not going to want to deviate from it.
I feel like if you're hiring right, you have people on your team that want to be successful. And so when you're championing successful behavior or the behavior that leads to success, like that's the right way to do it. And track the controllables daily and weekly and track the uncontrollables monthly or quarterly.
Boom. There it is. Well, dude, I think I'm excited we got back in the saddle. I think we missed 1 week due to some craziness going on. So we're back. We're back in business, back to our regularly scheduled programming. We'll be off next week. You and I are taking a little trip for my bachelor party. everybody listening, we plan to be back the following week. I hope we're back the following week alive and ready to go. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode, but glad we got back in the saddle, dude, talking about an important topic, especially as we are gearing up beginning of Q3 and really only 6 months left in the year to take care of business.
Dude, we're not at the beginning of Q3. We're almost halfway in what?
Time's
in
flying
10
by,
days.
bro. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, dude. Well, man, appreciate you. Everybody, thank you for tuning in and listening. I hope this gives some insight and some value. It was just like a realization for us. But enjoy the rest of your August, and we'll see you back on the Pursuit of Property podcast.
Boom.